We've got the generators in places, both north and south. We've got generators on Charleston, the Rubies. Here, they're ready. We had the program stood up. It has been there for 10 years. They're ready. We had the program stood up. It has been there for 10 years. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. Any technical questions, because I just know what they look like. The generators, that is. Thank you. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. If we get it front through, we need to seat it.
Okay, folks, so I want to share a little bit more information here concerning cloud seeding and the weather modification projects here in Nevada. And this SB 99 that was introduced by Senator Pete Buttigieg back in February of this year and then passed in June here, which gives $1.2 million to the Desert Research Institute to do their weather modification experiments using all of us here at ground level and across the valley as test subjects. And that's the facts. That's the truth. That's the bottom line of it, that a lot of these people in charge don't realize, is that they are taking the liberty to use everybody that lives here in this valley as a test subject, and I don't approve, I don't consent. And just for the record, though, there is a difference between geoengineering and weather modification, and for the record, I oppose both. The geoengineering thing with all the solar radiation management projects and stuff, I strongly oppose that. Hell to the no on that one, okay? And it's the same thing with the weather modification projects, which includes the cloud seeding projects and stuff like that. There's a difference between geoengineering and weather modification research. Anyway, I oppose all of it. And I don't think that this Desert Research Institute should have been given $1.2 million to continue to inject this stuff into our environment. And here's the thing about this. They keep continually telling us that it is safe and it is non-toxic, right? Well, where are they getting that data from? Because the data sheets that I have here, I have multiple data sheets. And those data sheets kind of say something a little bit different, but what they don't say is what's curious, okay? They tell us that it's not toxic, right? And what is silver iodide toxicity? I'll go into a little bit of that too, just to, you know, put some information out there, okay? But I think it's very curious. Oh, yep, and don't forget, folks, there is still this gag order here on the National Weather Service employees. And I suspect that this type of a gag order probably extends out to even the weather modification consultant agencies and the weather modification agents themselves and the people that are actually carrying out these projects. But that's, you know, that's just something that really shouldn't be forgotten. We need to remember that there are people who have witnessed and seen and have testimony about the human effects from these projects, and they're being held back and not allowed to tell the public. That is not informed consent. That is experimenting on the people and on human beings without their consent, and that is a severe violation. But it's very curious here that Google, when they offer up information about it, they can say that it's not considered very toxic. Really? That the health effects safety hazards for silver iodide is not considered very toxic and causes some irritation to skin and eyes upon exposure. However, severe exposure can lead to grayish discoloration of body tissue. This is highly irresponsible and dangerous for the public to only offer up that little tidbit of information as a side effect. Oh, it might cause your skin to turn gray. Gee, now I gotta wonder where the story and the narrative of the gray aliens came from, folks. Seriously. They've been doing this stuff since the 40s. Admittedly, in their own publications, they have been experimenting and using these weather modification techniques using silver iodine and other compounds since the 40s. So when exactly did the gray alien story come up? I mean, were there people that were sitting around and saying, hey, wait a minute, if we do this long enough, people are gonna end up with their skin turning gray. You know, and they're going to end up with other problems and stuff. Oh, well, you know, the respiratory issues we can just blame on big tobacco, you know, and the neurological issues and everything, we can just blame that on their upbringing and their mental states and what they've exposed themselves to in their own environments. And, you know, well, what about the gray stuff? Well, we'll just tell them it's aliens, right? Silver iodide is an inorganic compound with the formula AgI. The compound is a bright yellow solid, and I'll show you that on the data sheets, but samples almost always contain impurities of metallic silver that give a gray coloration. The silver contamination arises because some samples of AgI can be highly photosensitive. You don't say. Highly photosensitive, huh? I'm going to show you that too. This property is exploited in silver-based photography. It says here, it's just ridiculous how incredibly misleading this information on silver iodide is. Thus, silver iodide in the snowpack and cloud seeding areas will be considerably diluted during the spring melt, but it's an inorganic compound that is not water soluble. Keep that in mind. I'll show you that. Given these facts and the relatively low toxicity of silver in humans, the EEP concludes that silver from cloud seeding projects is not expected to harm people's health. Well, I have a question there. How is it that you know that it has a relatively low toxicity in humans? How do you know that? The following are possible side effects: skin rashes, swelling of the salivary glands, iodism, metallic taste, burning mouth and throat, sore teeth and gums, symptoms of a head cold, and sometimes upset stomach and diarrhea, which you can blame on the flu season. An allergic reaction can have more serious symptoms. You don't say. I wonder what those are. You don't offer up that kind of information, though, really. Yeah, okay. Well, let's just look at some of the data sheets, okay? And I'll go back to a little bit more information on what is silver iodide toxicity. But if we look at the data sheets, you see here, this is for silver iodide, okay? This is just in one of them, and I'll show you several where they say pretty much the same thing, okay? Now remember, Google and all of these so-called climate experts and meteorologists and these people running these research projects keep telling us that it is not toxic, right? It's not toxic. Well, if you can determine that something is not toxic, wouldn't you have had to have done studies and tests to determine whether or not it's toxic? And then wouldn't there be some kind of a record of some kind, documents of some kind available on the actual toxicological report, on the toxicological report, excuse me, that's a tough word to say. Wouldn't you think that information would be available if you can confidently say that it's not toxic or not considered very toxic? There should be some data available to back that up, right? Well, if we look at these publications here on the safety data sheets, we can see there's a common theme here. It causes eye and skin irritation, of course, may cause respiratory and digestive tract irritation, and it's light sensitive, okay? And you want to inject this stuff into the atmosphere when the sun's shining, but it's light sensitive? That's another question right there, folks. May cause reproductive and fetal effects. The toxicological properties of this material have not been fully investigated. Really? But Google and the Desert Research Institute all say that it's not very toxic. How can you determine that if it's not been fully evaluated? And where are the reports and the studies that back up what you're saying that it's not? Because these data sheets here, these safety data sheets say something different, and they all say the same thing. They target the thyroids. Eye and skin irritation can cause eczema and rash. Ingestion may cause irritation of the digestive tract. And the toxicological properties of this substance have not been fully investigated. Chronic ingestion of iodides during pregnancy has resulted in fetal death, severe goiter, and cretinoid appearance of the newborn. May cause respiratory tract infection, irritation. And again, the toxicological properties of the substance have not been fully investigated. Same thing, prolonged exposure to iodides may produce iodism in sensitive individuals. Symptoms could include skin rash, running nose, and headache. And again, how do you know? Let's look at some of this other stuff here. The handling and storage. Wash thoroughly after handling. Remove contaminated clothing and wash before reuse. Use with adequate ventilation. Minimize dust generation and accumulation. We have some pretty dusty, windy days around here, don't we? Avoid contact with eye, skin, and clothing. Keep container tightly closed. Avoid ingestion, inhalation. Store protected from light. From light. It tells you in the safety data sheet to keep this stuff out of the light, that it's photosensitive, and you want to inject it into our atmosphere? Please, safe and non-toxic my ass. Facilities storing or utilizing this material should be equipped with an eye wash facility and a safety shower. Use adequate ventilation to keep airborne concentrations low. Well, fuck me running. You want to zip this stuff right out into our atmosphere, right? Safe and non-toxic my ass. And here we go with a little bit of information here. Safe, stability and reactivity. Stable under normal temperatures and pressures. Well, what about abnormal temperatures and abnormal pressures? Conditions to avoid. High temperatures, incompatible materials, light and dust generation. How can you possibly avoid any of these here in Nevada? Okay, high temperatures, hello. We've had 100+ degree weather for quite a while. Incompatible materials, well, what's your control measures in your target areas to control the incompatible materials? How do you know? How can you control that? Light, hello, it's daytime. There's light every fucking where during the day. Dust generation? Oh, please. I wish they could do something about the dust generation around here anyway, because I'll tell you, the dust bunnies out here in Nevada, whoo, they're mutants compared to the dust bunnies back in Michigan, I'll tell you that much. incompatibilities with other materials, strong oxidizing agents, hazardous decomposition products, irritating and toxic fumes and gases, hydrogen iodide. And hazardous polymers has not been reported. Okay, well, that's a whole other thing, too, but... and here we go. The toxicological information not available. No information found. No information found. Reproductive effects. No information found. No information found. No information found. But yet you can state here in your Google thing, on your Google propagandist pages, that it's not considered very toxic and that it's not expected to harm people's health. Well, how do you know that? How can you say that it's not toxic if you can't produce the studies that says that it's not? How can you determine that it's not? Because all of these safety data, I'll show you a repeated theme. It's the same theme on all of these. The same theme. Supply fresh hair. Seek immediate medical attention. Immediately wash. After eye contact, seek medical treatment. Accidental release measures. Wear protective equipment. Keep unprotected persons away. Ensure adequate ventilation. Oh, that's fine. Ventilate it all out into the atmosphere here, though, right? But it's okay, everybody, because it's diluted. And it loses all of its harmful effects when it gets diluted, right? Well, how do you know that? Where's the data to back that up? Seriously. There's EPA reports that show measurements and things being done. But according to my research, those measurements really are always right there at that threshold. And those measurements can be doctored and fixed if you got the EPA in your pocket. And most of these agencies, like NOAA and the National Weather Service, they absolutely have EPA in their fucking pockets. They greased the EPA's pockets a long time ago, back when the EPA started agreeing to setting certain standards for certain areas, and then states started exploiting that by creating these thresholds, these margins where they just barely go over that threshold, just enough to open them coffer doors for their projects. Okay? So, wear protective equipment. That alone to me. If you have to wear protective equipment to handle it, it doesn't belong being sprayed out freely in our environment. Same thing. Let me just peek through exposure controls, personal protection. Properly operating chemical fume hood designed for hazardous chemicals and having an average face velocity of at least 100 feet per minute. Wow. Yeah, because we all have that, right? Additional information. Wash hands. Maintain an ergonomically appropriate working environment. Use suitable respirator when high concentrations are present. Impervious gloves. Physical and chemical prop. And again, not determined. All of these not determined, not determined, not determined. And then once again, what do you have? The ecological information where it says it is very toxic for aquatic organisms. Okay, I have a couple of other papers and a couple of other reports that actually state the same thing. And this is a safety data sheet on silver iodide. Okay, and it's kind of interesting. Toxicity, once again, aquatic toxicity. No further relevant information available. No further relevant information available. No information available. No information available. But the ecotoxical effects, very toxic for aquatic organisms. Do not allow material to be released to the environment without proper governmental permits. In other words, once you get permission, you can do it. But who's giving those people that are giving permission, like NOAA, the permission to give people the permission? See what I'm saying? Because the public's obviously not informed on this, because the majority of people still believe that this is just a conspiracy and those are just contrails, right? And those are just natural cloud formations that are producing enhanced storm systems that are behaving in unnatural ways. Just saying. Also, poisonous for fish and plankton in water bodies. May cause long-lasting harmful effects to aquatic life. Well, it's perfectly safe for humans, though. Right? Very toxic for aquatic organisms. Aren't we, like, mostly made of water? You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Then again, you look at some of the other regulatory information. It's not applicable. They're not regulating it as far as transporting it either. So, not toxic. How can you determine that? Every one of these data sheets. Here's another data sheet from yet another source. Okay. We'll find the same thing. Right here. Same thing. Do not let product enter drains. Well, how do we keep it out of our drains? Out of Lake Mead? Right? Cover drains. Collect, bind, and pump off spills. Observe possible material restrictions. Yeah, and again, I have to question. It's light sensitive. And you want to put it into our atmosphere. Into our lighted atmosphere. Okay? Perhaps maybe that's why sometimes I see these trails at night. I don't know. But I see a lot more of them during the daytime than I do at night. And again, we're getting the same basic information, just a different source. Use equipment for eye protection, tested and approved under appropriate government standards. Handle with impervious gloves. Respiratory protection required when dusts are generated. Our recommendations on filtering respiratory protection are based on the following standards. Yeah. So you have to wear protective equipment, and you do not let the product enter into the drains, but it's perfectly safe. It's not toxic. Not toxic at all, right? And again, we're dealing with no data available on any of this. And you've been using it for how many decades for your weather modification projects? No data available. And again, no data available. Conditions to avoid. Light. And then what would this no information available be for? I mean, seriously, folks, we have a right to question this. We really, really do. And more people probably should. I'm just saying. It's not completely harmless. Acute toxicity. Oh, no data available. What do you know? No data available. Information on toxicological effects. No data available. But Google says it's not toxic. And these other agencies say that it's not expected to be harmful. And it's the relatively low toxicity. How do you know it's relatively low? Where's your study to back that up? Just saying. People need to question this shit. Reproductive toxicity. No data. No data. No data. No data. No data. No freaking data to back up the science that they're telling us to trust. No thanks. I do not consent. Same thing. No data, no data, no data. Let's look at yet another one. Here's the one that talks about the toxic to aquatic life. Oh, I need a drink really quick. Damn. Yeah, this is coming from Pharmachem. We're talking about silver iodide. Okay. Safety data sheet. Again, what do we see? A warning. Very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. Avoid release to the environment. Okay. Unless you fill out a report and file it with NOAA and pay your fees, then, you can go ahead and release it into the environment. Yeah, may cause argyria, again, may cause argyria, a slate gray or bluish discoloration of the skin and deep tissues due to the deposit of insoluble albuminate of silver. Insoluble. It does not break down in water. It is a forever compound, remaining forever in our environment. To the best of our knowledge, the chemical, physical, and toxicological properties have not been thoroughly investigated. Well, then how the hell can you say that it's not toxic? Again, because I'm repetitive, I gotta say it again. How can you say it is not very toxic when the toxicological properties have not been thoroughly investigated? Avoid dust formation. I mean, avoid breathing the vapors, mystery the gas, ensure adequate ventilation. But it's okay, because it gets diluted before it gets down to us here at ground level. Right? And again, no data available. No data available. Conditions to avoid. Light. No data available. No data available. No data available. May be harmful if inhaled. May cause respiratory tract irritation. May be harmful if absorbed through the skin. May cause skin irritation. May cause eye irritation. But it's perfectly non-toxic. And once again, there's the other adverse effects they list. It's very toxic. Not just toxic, but very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. Yet another safety data sheet. We're talking about silver iodide. One last one before I end this video. Just to compound the fact that there's no way that they can say that it's not toxic without producing the science and the studies to back it up. Do not flush into surface water or sanitary sewer systems. Do not allow material to contaminate groundwater system. Well, you know what? They've been doing it over here and up to the north, Utah and around in California long enough that I'm pretty sure that it's probably made its way into our water tables. But the safety data sheet here says not to let it do that. Prevent the product from entering drains. Local authorities should be advised if significant spillages cannot be contained. How do you contain it when you just spray it out freely into a cloud cell that's passing by? Wear appropriate protective eyeglasses or chemical safety goggles. Wear appropriate protective gloves and clothing to prevent skin exposure. So should we all be walking around with them freaking headdresses and robes and masks? I mean, reactive hazard, none known based on information available. Well, there's not a lot of information available according to your data sheet, and it's stable under normal conditions. Well, that leaves, what about abnormal? Strong oxidizing agents, incompatible products, normal conditions. No information available on the acute toxicity. No information available, no information available, no information available. Again, reproductive helps, no information available. No information available. And again, the toxicological properties have not been fully investigated. That is a repeated theme in every data sheet I have looked at and reviewed. And this is just a handful of them that I have looked at, and I can tell you the ones that I didn't print out say the same exact thing. That the toxicological properties have not been fully investigated, but yet they know that, and they can say that it's the ecotoxicity, that it is very toxic to aquatic organisms, may cause long-term adverse effects in the aquatic environment, and this product contains following substances which are hazardous for the environment, may persist based on information available. May persist, that means that it does not break down. It is forever. Once they inject it into our atmosphere and it gets into that cloud cell and it drops down to ground level, it is forever a part of our environment. Not regulated for the transportation of it. Seriously, folks, more people need to get on board with this and start asking some more questions when they're talking about using these different compounds and this stuff, and then they tell us that it's perfectly safe. It's not, it's not toxic, but again, because I'm repetitive, I just gotta say it again. How do you know? Because every safety data sheet on it states that the toxicological effects have not been fully evaluated, and that every person that's handling it must wear protective equipment. And like I said, because I'm repetitive, once again, I'll say it once again because I'm repetitive. If you got to wear protective equipment to handle the compounds when you're loading up your generators, you probably should not be like freely spraying it out over everybody here. I mean, just saying. Where do you draw the line? And where are the toxicological reports to back up that you say that it's not toxic and that you say that it's not expected to harm people's health? Oh, it's not expected to, but what happens when it starts? Because I believe that it already has. And if I had lots more time, I would probably share more information on you on how I believe that it has affected public health. I'm pretty sure most of you watching these videos of mine on this stuff already know the effects that this type of weather modification techniques has on the human body and on our biological systems. But we're just too stupid because we don't have a degree, and we're not meteorologists, and we're not scientists. I'm incredibly insulted by the information that has been put forth by the people in charge at the Desert Research Institute. They should be ashamed of themselves, quite frankly. If they're in the business of being good stewards to our planet and they care about our planet and the health and the welfare of human beings, they should be ashamed of themselves for not allowing all information to be published and not informing the public fully before putting forth a bill in our Senate where you're getting taxpayer dollars now to poison us. How incredibly diabolical and shameful do you have to be? Really. Well, let's just look a little bit at this. What is silver iodide toxicity? Silver iodide is a chemical compound composed of silver and iodine that has been used in industry for many years. It has been used as an agricultural pesticide and in cloud seeding, a process that involves releasing silver iodide into clouds to create rain. It is also used in photography and as a disinfectant. Unfortunately, the use of silver iodide has been linked to numerous health risks, including toxicity, reproductive disorders, developmental defects, and cancer. Symptoms of silver iodide toxicity include coughing, wheezing, and difficulty breathing. Silver iodide is extremely toxic and can cause severe burns if it comes in contact with the skin. Inhaling silver iodide can also be fatal. Silver iodide, AgI, is a yellowish-white powder used in photography as a pigment and in manufacturing certain types of glass. It can also be found in some air pollution control devices. Silver iodide is slightly soluble in water and is more toxic than silver. When silver iodide enters the environment, it can attach to particles in the air, such as dust or smoke. Once these contaminated particles are inhaled, they can deposit in the lungs and cause irritation. Ingestion to silver iodide can lead to nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Prolonged exposure to silver iodide can cause argyria, a condition where silver deposits in the tissues, causing them to turn blue and gray. Who are at risk of silver iodide toxicity? People who are at an increased risk of silver iodide toxicity are listed below. People who work with silver iodide in a laboratory or industrial setting. People such as miners or smelters who are exposed to silver iodide through their occupation. People who live in areas where silver iodide is used for cloud seeding. Infants and young children. Symptoms of silver iodide toxicity can range from mild to severe, including skin irritation, gastrointestinal upset, and respiratory problems. If a person has been exposed to silver iodide, it is important to seek medical attention immediately. But, around here, if you get exposed to it and you go to your doctor, try telling them that you want them to test you for silver iodide toxicity, see what they say. They're just going to tell you that you're suffering from seasonal allergies. That's a good cover story, isn't it? I would be very curious to do an in-depth investigation into the exact dates and times when they were running their cloud seeding project the last 10 years up there on Mount Charleston, and then all of these projects that they've had ongoing with California, how it coincides with, seasonal allergies and illnesses that are reported to the public health departments. That'd be an interesting investigation, wouldn't it? What are the sources of exposure to silver iodide? Some potential sources of exposure to silver iodide include occupational exposure. Workers in industries that use silver iodide, such as semiconductor or photography industries, may be exposed to the chemical through inhalation, ingestion, or skin contact. And again, they're required, according to the safety data sheet, to wear PPE to protect them. Environmental exposure. Silver iodide may be released into the environment due to its use in cloud seeding or through accidental spills or leaks. Consumer products. Silver iodide may be present in some consumer products, such as certain types of jewelry and clothing, or as an ingredient in cosmetics or dietary supplements. Medical treatment. Silver iodide may be used as a medicinal agent and applied to the skin in creams, ointments, or dressings. Colloidal silver. There's a big difference between silver iodide and colloidal silver. Look it up. Silver iodide may be present in some food or water sources due to environmental contamination. Let's see, what are some of the symptoms of silver iodide toxicity listed below? Irritation of the eyes, skin and mucous membranes, gastrointestinal irritation, vomiting, diarrhea, coughing and difficulty breathing, kidney damage, brain damage, death, rash or hives, tremors, abdominal pain, changes in skin color. How is silver iodide toxicity diagnosed? Silver iodide toxicity can be diagnosed through a physical examination and by reviewing the person's medical history, including any recent exposure to silver iodide. The healthcare provider may also order lab tests to measure the levels of silver in the body. If a person has been exposed to silver iodide and is experiencing the symptoms of toxicity, it is important to seek medical attention immediately. To confirm a diagnosis of silver iodide toxicity, the healthcare provider may order a silver blood level test. This test measures the amount of silver in the blood and can help determine the severity of the toxicity. So I bet you there's not a lot of doctors around the valley here that are doing those kinds of tests, right? Well, I mean, we are the silver state, so if they're not aware of the risks and the benefits of our human bodies being exposed to silver and silver iodide by now, and they can't produce something for the safety data sheets and for the safety agencies that are in charge, like the EPA and all that are in charge of standardizing and regulating all of that stuff, you can't give them anything at all. To prevent silver iodide toxicity, it is important to handle it carefully and follow safety precautions when working with it. Here are some tips to help prevent silver iodide toxicity. Wear protective clothing. When handling silver iodide, wear gloves, a lab coat, and goggles to protect the skin and eyes. Use it in a well-ventilated area. Silver iodide should be used in a well-ventilated area to reduce the risk of inhalation. Well, just freely and spray it. It's perfectly safe because it gets all diluted, right? Keep in a safe, secure container. Follow proper disposal guidelines for silver iodide, which may involve diluting it with water and disposing it in a designated waste container. Well, just dump it right in the Lake Mead. What is the treatment for silver iodide toxicity? Activated charcoal and supportive care. But there's long-term effects, really, that just over a long term can degrade our immune systems too. Just keep that in mind, that exposure to these types of inorganic compounds and these type of chemicals that they're injecting into our environment over long periods of time, it can weaken immune systems and it can degrade our biological systems. In conclusion, silver iodide is a chemical compound used in medical and industrial settings. While it is generally not non-toxic to humans, exposure to large amounts of silver iodide can cause various symptoms including nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, skin irritation, eye irritation, respiratory problems, and headache. If a person suspects they have been exposed to silver iodide and are experiencing any of these symptoms, it is essential to seek medical attention as soon as possible. The treatment for silver iodide toxicity will depend on the toxicity, severity, and the symptoms present. It may include gastric lavage, activated charcoal, and supportive care measures such as medications and fluids. It is essential to follow all safety guidelines when handling silver iodide to minimize the risk of exposure and potential toxicity. But you can just spray it freely, and you can just say that it's not considered very toxic and that it's not expected to harm people's health. I have so many questions about it, and I really think that it's very irresponsible of the senator here and our so-called leaders here in Nevada to just not allow all information out there for people. It really is quite diabolical, really, when you think about it. The way they've gone about getting approval for these projects for the Desert Research Institute and stuff, and how California and Utah and Texas, all these states have been doing this for decades. And you still can't come up with all the information on this inorganic compound. We shouldn't be seeing all of this no data available. There should be toxicological reports available, especially if they've already determined that it's very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. Need to question this shit, folks. For real. Anyway, I'm going to end this video now. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned. There's definitely more to come if I can help it.
We've got the generators in places, both north and south. We've got generators on Charleston and Ruby, Secure. They're ready. We had the program stood up. It has been there for 10 years. They're ready. We had the program stood up. It has been there for 10 years. Has been there for 10 years. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. Any technical questions, because I just know what they look like. The generators, that is. Thank you. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. If we get it front through, we need to seat it.
It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for a space communication satellite that will permit the people of the world to see one television program at the same time throughout the world. Think about that kind of communication, and think about the opportunity that will provide. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately